I deliberately did my best to avoid discussing any E3 predictions or expectations for as long as I could, because past experience has taught me that doing it in advance is a foolish endeavor, because after you do that, in the month leading up to E3, half the games you talk about will either be officially announced prior to their conferences, or the games will be confirmed to not show up at E3. And lucky I did that, because had I done that before, a lot of my predictions would have been wrong, because a lot of the games that I was talking about aren't showing up at E3, but we'll get to that later. Now, obviously, I'm going to be going through the 3 major conferences, not talking about multi-platform games, because we already know what we're going to see. Most of the multi-platform games that are coming out have already been announced, and the ones that haven't been announced, we already know what they are. So I'm going to be focusing on the 3 major conferences in the 3 days leading up to E3. So Microsoft, Sony, and Nintendo. It's appropriate that we first start with Microsoft, as they go first. Not because I have the highest expectations, I don't have high expectations at all. I did have slightly higher expectations earlier this morning, but then when I found out that Crackdown, not even Phantom Dust, because that game has been cancelled. Good job, Microsoft. But Crackdown, Scalebound, and Quantum Break won't be at E3. They'll be coming to Gamescom. Now, I know what you're saying. Oh, they're still coming later, so what's the big deal? The big deal for me is that those were games that I cared about. I mean, we haven't seen gameplay, but the thing is, it's like, they were new to some extent. Quantum Break is a new IP, Scalebound is a new IP that, based on the information we've heard, is a seemingly new concept for a game in general, and of course you got Crackdown, which is a revitalization. We don't know a lot about it. Now, we think about it this way, those games were announced in E3 of 2014, for 2015 release dates. We now know that's bullshit, because if these games are showing up at Gamescom, they're coming out next year, which also should stick in your mind, so that when you see if Microsoft do announce a new Rare game, that's probably not coming out for the next 2 years. Just keep that in mind. But anyway, my issue here with these games not being shown at E3 is because, one, they would have added diversity to the conference. You know, as it stands right now, the games that we know will be there are like these big franchises, but they're also very, you know, just run-of-the-mill franchises. You know, you've got things like Halo. We'll probably see a Gears of War trailer, and for Gears of War 4, and of course the Gears of War Remastered, or whatever they're going to call it. We're going to see Tomb Raider, you know, Forza, a series that I don't care about. And you know, it would have been good to add the diversity with things like Scalebound from a Japanese developer, and Crackdown, you know, at least showing something new for that. But no, that's not happening. And the problem that I have is, when I saw this, all I could think was, I do not see Microsoft having good enough substitutes for this. I mean, they could prove me wrong for sure. But outside of those games I've listed, as well as probably a trailer for Killer Instinct Season 3, maybe, and this is the big thing, maybe a new Rare game. Outside of that, I don't know what else they could possibly bring. They're very different to Sony or Nintendo, where we know that they have the studios and the IPs. And we already know that Sony are working on a bunch of different new IPs. And with Nintendo, we know that they've got a bunch of games in the pipeline. But with Microsoft, like, really, we don't know how many things that they've got coming. I suspect very few, and out of those few, even less releasing in the next year. And by the next year, I mean before E3 2016. I really just don't see it. I could be wrong, but I'm usually not on this kind of thing. And even if, I just don't get it. I really don't. And the problem is, it's like, we know the kind of things that Microsoft are gonna do. Here's what they should have done. They should have brought these games to E3 and cut Forza out. I know it's popular, but is it really popular with the kinds of people who watch these conferences? Probably not. The people who watch these conferences are interested in games that are more obscure to some extent. Obviously not to a great extent, because COD still shows up and people gulp it up like a bunch of slack-jawed yokels. But, I mean, come on. Like, I mean, let's talk about the things that I would like them to do with this knowledge in mind that we're not going to see these games. Please, for the love of God, focus on exclusives. Just focus on exclusives. And I know this is foolish in me to say, because we know that they're going to show things like Call of Duty and a bunch of other multi-platform games. And I know that they're going to spend some time talking about the interconnectivity between Windows 10 and Xbox One that I don't care about because, really, why the hell would I? You're trying to sell me the Xbox, not Windows 10. You don't need to sell me that because it's free. Most people are gonna get it. I've got my copies reserved. I don't need you talking to me about all this interconnectivity for products that I don't want to connect. And of course, this is not necessarily a negative that, because Microsoft's now got the deal with Oculus, which means that we're probably gonna see some Oculus stuff at E3. And while I personally don't care about that stuff, that's fine. You can talk about that, absolutely. As long as you don't spend too long, but do talk about it, because there are a lot of people who are interested in that stuff. But outside of that, I'm just left sitting here, just really skeptical about what they're gonna bring. Outside of the games I've already said, can you really expect them to surprise you? Can you really expect them to have lots of exclusives, because really, those are what they need to sell the system? Do you really have that much faith in Microsoft? I could be wrong, but I'm really skeptical. And this news that these 3 games I was looking forward to aren't showing up, it just makes it a whole lot worse. And frankly, I don't have very high expectations for their conference. Look, I saw what they said, that they're going to be like, oh, this is going to be the greatest lineup of Xbox games ever. I mean, really? Really? Is that what you want to say to me? Because it seems like a bit of bullshit to me. In fact, really, this is the most appropriate clip I can show you to explain how I feel about that line, that this will be a great lineup of games at their E3 conference.
You're a liar! You're a liar! You know something that you're not telling us, you slimy scumbag liar! Liar! Tell us what you know, you goddamn liar! Confess! Liar! Confess!